drought with King Ahab and the prophet Elijah back in 1 Kings chapter 17. This is the time when Elijah prayed that there'd be a drought because this king was evil and he needed to reckon with this. He was opposing God. But God's people were threatened in that time, but preserved through that time. So that 3.5-year period is already there in the Bible. And we understand that to be then, this is the time we're in right now, between the comings of Jesus. It's not a literal 1,260 days. It's not a literal 3.5 years. It's this time in which God's people are being preserved and kept for Him. So 1,260, you're a time, times, and half a time. All right? So there's the summary. The church, Jesus Christ, the devil or Satan, and the present time of trial and persecution, but also God preserving us through this time. That's the second thing, those symbols that we should understand in this text. Third thing this morning, here's the gist of the message, right? Know that Satan can no longer accuse us before God. That word, he's the accuser. He accuses us before God. Accuses us day and night before our God, the text says. Accuses us before God. So what's that talking about? Well, this is really the key of all of Revelation 12. And you've got to go back to the Old Testament again. So many things in the New Testament, practically everything in the New Testament, needs to be understood in light of what the first part of the Bible, the Old Testament, says. And there you have this amazing story in the book of Job. Job was this man who suffered greatly. Things happened in his life. And he hung on and he kept hope in God, as difficult as that was for him. But the story of Job begins in a very strange way. Satan can come up and talk to God in heaven. That seems strange. How did that get to be? I don't know. That's just how we start. But then God says to him, have you considered my servant Job? God thinks highly of Job. Job is a good man. And you know what Satan says? You know, he wouldn't be so good if you didn't treat him so well. And so right away Satan tries to wiggle in, to pry God from his people. And God allows Satan to do some things to test Job. And Job, we find out, even when he loses so much, nearly everything in his life, still remains faithful to God. As difficult as that is for him, remains faithful to God. But that idea that that Satan can get to God and can try to do things to pry us away from Him, that's there. And that's kind of disturbing, isn't it? That's the trouble. We don't want that to happen. He can accuse, he can pry us away. And this war that's been going on, this war in heaven, is really the resolution of that. Satan thrown out of heaven, hurled down. We heard that many times. He can't get to God anymore. His access has been cut off because Jesus has covered for sin. Your sin, my sin, covered for by what Jesus has done. Jesus came to be born, to live, to suffer on this earth, to die, and then finally to rise. And He's ascended to the right hand of the Father now. But He did what was necessary to cover for our sins.